Tonight, we are going to travel back nearly 2,000 years to a warm summer evening in the Roman city of Pompeii, before the ash, before the destruction, and before the city became known throughout the world for its final day. Pompeii was simply home. It was a living city filled with narrow streets, painted houses, busy workshops, public fountains, bakeries, temples, gardens, markets, and bathhouses. People worked here, raised children here, argued with their neighbors, shared meals, made plans, worried about money, and expected tomorrow to arrive just as it always had. So settle comfortably where you are. Let the noise of the present begin to fade. Allow your breathing to slow as we step gently backward through time, toward the Bay of Naples, into the fading light of an ordinary Roman evening. Pompeii rested on fertile land not far from the sea. Vineyards covered parts of the surrounding countryside, while olive trees, fruit trees, grain fields, and vegetable gardens supplied the city and nearby settlements. The dark volcanic soil was rich and productive. Farmers had worked it for generations. The mountain rising beyond the fields was part of the familiar landscape, Mount Vesuvius. Today, its name immediately brings thoughts of volcanic fire, falling ash, and buried streets. But to the people living in Pompeii, the mountain did not carry the same meaning. It was simply there, a large and quiet shape beyond the rooftops. Its slopes supported vineyards and farms. Its presence was so familiar that most people probably gave it little thought. As they moved through their daily routines, the city itself was prosperous and well connected. Goods arrived from across the Roman world. Wine, olive oil, pottery, cloth, spices, metals, fish, and grain passed through the hands of merchants and customers. Some products were made locally. Others had traveled across the Mediterranean. Clay amphorae stored liquids and preserved foods. Baskets held fruit and vegetables. Workshops produced tools, textiles, furniture, lamps, and household objects. Pompeii was not the largest or most important city in the Roman Empire, but it was active, wealthy, and proud. Thousands of people lived within its walls and in the surrounding countryside. We cannot know the exact population with certainty, but estimates often place it somewhere around 10 to 20,000 people, depending on how the nearby area is counted. They belong to many different levels of society. Wealthy families lived in large homes, arranged around open courtyards and gardens. Craftsmen worked in shops facing the street. Merchants conducted business near their homes. Laborers rented smaller rooms. Enslaved people carried out much of the difficult work that kept households, farms, workshops, and businesses functioning. Freedmen, former slaves who had gained their freedom, could become successful business owners and respected members of the community. Children ran errands and played in the streets. Travelers entered through the city gates. Animals pulled carts, carried loads, or wandered in search of scraps. Life was crowded, unequal, noisy, and full of movement. If you approach Pompeii late in the afternoon, the first thing you might notice would be the warm color of the city beneath the lowering sun. Red clay rooftops covered many of the buildings. Stone and plaster walls reflected the golden light. Taller temples and public buildings rose above the surrounding homes. Beyond the walls, vineyards and farms stretched toward the mountain. The Bay of Naples shimmered in the distance. The streets were paved with large blocks of dark volcanic stone. Years of cart traffic had worn deep grooves into their surfaces. Raised sidewalks ran along many roads, while large stepping stones allowed pedestrians to cross without walking through water, mud, or waste that might collect below. Cart wheels had to pass carefully between these stones. The repeated movement of traffic had shaped the streets over generations. Public fountains stood at important corners and crossroads. Water flowed from carved spouts into stone basins polished by constant use. People came throughout the day carrying jars and containers. While waiting, they exchanged news, repeated gossip, discussed prices, complained about local problems, and watched the city move around them. Water connected the daily life of the neighborhood. It was needed for cooking, drinking, washing, cleaning, gardens, animals, and workshops. Not every house had a private supply, so public fountains remained essential. Pompeii was also a city of color. The ruins we see today can make the Roman world appear gray and bare, but the living city was painted. Exterior walls carried advertisements, political endorsements, notices, and graffiti. Inside homes, walls might be covered with deep red, yellow, black, white, and blue designs. Some paintings showed gardens filled with birds and plants. Others depicted architecture, landscapes, gods, heroes, animals, and scenes from mythology. Columns and statues could also be painted. Bright fabrics hung inside houses and shops. Fresh flowers grew in courtyards. Fruit and vegetables added more color to the markets. The ancient city was not silent or colorless. It was vivid and constantly changing. Religion was woven into almost every part of life. Large temples stood in public spaces, but worship was not limited to grand ceremonies. Small shrines appeared in homes, shops, neighborhoods, and at crossroads. Families honored protective household spirits. Merchants offered prayers for successful business. Travelers asked for safe journeys. Farmers hoped for favorable weather. A person might light a lamp or leave a small offering without treating the moment as unusual. The sacred and the practical existed side by side. Someone could pray in the morning, bargain over the price of grain later, and complain about a neighbor before supper. Public life centered around the forum. This open space was surrounded by temples, government buildings, commercial areas, and monuments. During the day, it could be filled with business, legal matters, religious activity, political discussion, and ordinary conversation. People came to hear announcements, meet clients, settle disputes, buy goods, or simply observe what was happening. By late afternoon, however, the busiest part of the day was beginning to pass. The sunlight softened. Shadows grew longer between the columns and buildings. People who had spent hours in the forum began to leave. Shopkeepers prepared to count the final coins of the day. Workers began putting away tools. Customers hurried to purchase bread, oil, wine, fruit, or vegetables before the shutters closed. The sounds of Pompeii slowly changed. Earlier, the city had been filled with loud bargaining, hammering, grinding stone, cart wheels, hooves animals, and voices calling across crowded streets. Now those sounds became less urgent. A wooden shutter closed. A broom scraped against stone. A basket was lifted from a market stall. Someone called a child home. A mule shifted beneath its load. Water continued to fall into a fountain basin with the same steady rhythm it had kept all day. The air still held the warmth of the sun. Stone walls released heat gathered during the afternoon. The smell of baking bread drifted from a nearby bakery. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Olive oil warmed in kitchens. Fish, wine, animals, damp stone, herbs, dust, and human activity mixed together in the narrow streets. Ancient cities carried strong smells. Some were pleasant, others were not. Yet to the people living here, they were simply the familiar scent of home. The city was still recovering from a major earthquake that had struck the region 17 years earlier. Buildings had collapsed or suffered serious damage. Repairs had continued for years. Some walls were freshly plastered. Others remained cracked or unfinished. Work crews still repaired homes, temples, shops, and public buildings. For the people of Pompeii, earthquakes were frightening but familiar. They had survived before. They had rebuilt before. Life had continued. Small tremors could be ignored because most of them passed without disaster. A cup might rattle. A lamp might sway. Someone might pause for a moment before returning to work. Familiar danger often becomes part of the background. People adapt because they must. The mountain remained quiet. No enormous cloud rose from its summit. No fire was visible. Nothing in the peaceful evening sky suggested that the city was approaching its final hours. And this is what makes the story of Pompeii so haunting. The people were not waiting for a disaster. They were waiting for supper. They were thinking about unfinished work, debts, family visits, tomorrow's bread, the weather, the harvest, and the small concerns that fill every ordinary life. Someone was sweeping a floor. Someone was buying fruit. Someone was preparing a lamp. Someone was repairing a wall. Someone was carrying water home. Someone was promising to finish a task in the morning. The city was alive in all the quiet ways that rarely enter history books. As the sun moved lower, golden light touched the red rooftops and upper walls for a little longer. The streets below began to fall into shadow. Merchants glanced toward the sky and measured the remaining daylight. Families started turning toward home. The evening meal waited. Bathhouses were still open. Servants prepared rooms. Children continued playing until they were called indoors. One by one, small oil lamps would soon appear behind doorways and open courtyards. Pompeii was beginning its final quiet evening. No one knew it was final. To everyone living beneath the mountain, it was simply another warm night at the end of an ordinary day. As the last golden light slips behind the rooftops, the rhythm of the city begins to change. The busiest hours are over. The merchants who spent the afternoon calling out to customers now lower their voices. The streets remain lively, but the hurried pace of the day slowly gives way to something calmer. It is the familiar transition that happens every evening, one that no one pays much attention to because it has happened so many times before. A fruit seller gathers the last figs and grapes from a woven basket. The finest produce has already been sold, but a few peaches, onions, herbs, and olives remain. What cannot be sold tonight will be carefully stored until morning. Food is valuable, and little is wasted. Nearby, a butcher wipes down his heavy wooden table. Without modern refrigeration, fresh meat must be sold quickly or preserved with salt and careful preparation. Every household understands this. Experience has taught them how to make food last through the changing seasons. Not far away, a fish merchant rinses his counter with fresh water. Only hours earlier, fish from the Bay of Naples lay neatly displayed for customers arriving from every corner of the city. Now only the smell of the sea lingers in the evening air. A baker carries empty baskets back inside his shop. The ovens have burned since long before sunrise, producing hundreds of round loaves for the city's households. Bread is one of the foundations of Roman life. Rich or poor, almost everyone eats it every day. Some loaves carry small stamped marks identifying the baker or the family who commissioned them. In communal ovens, such markings help ensure that every household receives its own bread back after baking. Inside another shop, rows of clay amphorae stand neatly against the wall. Some contain wine. Others hold olive oil, vinegar, preserved olives, or the famous Roman fish sauce known as garum. To modern tastes, it may sound unusual, but garum was one of the most popular seasonings throughout the Roman world. It flavored countless meals, from the simplest supper to the tables of wealthy families. The merchant checks each seal before closing the storage room. Everything is ready for tomorrow. Across the street, a cloth merchant folds bolts of brightly dyed fabric. Deep reds, warm yellows, soft blues. Natural wool remains the most common material. Though wealthier customers may purchase finer fabrics imported from distant provinces of the empire, a woman pauses to examine one length of cloth. She gently runs her fingers across the weave. For a moment she considers buying it. Then she smiles politely and walks away. Perhaps next month. Perhaps after the harvest. Trade often ends with a promise rather than a purchase. At the edge of the marketplace, a bronze worker carefully stores his finished tools, knives, cooking utensils, door fittings, small household objects. Each one has been shaped by hand over many hours of patient work. The workshop, so full of hammering during the day, now falls silent. Its wooden door closes. Children continue darting through the narrowing streets. They leap across the stepping stones, chasing one another between adults carrying baskets toward home. To them, the city is still a playground. They laugh without worrying about tomorrow. One little boy nearly stumbles before catching his balance and continuing as though nothing happened. His friends laugh with him. The moment is quickly forgotten. Two stray dogs wander through the nearly empty market. They know exactly where scraps are most likely to appear. One pauses outside a bakery. The baker notices and tosses a small piece of bread toward the animal. It disappears almost instantly, a tiny act of kindness, so ordinary that no one gives it another thought. Yet moments like these remind us that history is built from countless small gestures rather than great events alone. Near the forum, a man finishes writing on a wax tablet business accounts, deliveries, payments, simple records of an ordinary day. Nearby, another carefully rolls a papyrus document before placing it inside a protective case. Tomorrow's work has already begun. The conversations around the square have changed as well. Earlier they centered on prices, customers, and deliveries. Now they turn toward families, evening meals, tomorrow's plans, and small neighborhood news. Someone mentions that a neighbor has nearly finished repairing a wall damaged years ago by the earthquake. Another complains about taxes. A third laughs about an argument that happened earlier in the marketplace. Nothing feels important enough to remember. Yet together, these conversations form the heartbeat of a living city. On one wall, a painted political slogan catches the final sunlight. Nearby, graffiti scratched into the plaster records another small piece of someone's life. Some messages praise candidates. Some advertise businesses. Others simply declare affection for a friend or complain about an unpleasant neighbor. The walls themselves become conversations stretching across years. The forum grows quieter. Its broad open space, so crowded during the afternoon, now holds only scattered figures crossing beneath the long shadows of temples and public buildings. Columns glow briefly in the warm evening light before slowly fading into shade. The mountain beyond the city remains unchanged. Vesuvius watches in complete silence. Its slopes appear peaceful. Its vineyards stretch across the lower hills exactly as they have for generations. Nothing about its appearance encourages fear. A cool breeze arrives from the Bay of Naples. It carries the faint smell of salt water and fishing boats returning toward shore. The heat of the day finally begins to loosen its grip on the city. People notice it almost unconsciously. Shoulders relax, conversations slow. The evening feels comfortable. One by one, wooden shutters swing closed. Heavy doors are pulled inward. Shopkeepers secure their entrances, expecting to unlock them again at sunrise. Tools are placed where they will be needed tomorrow. Bread is wrapped in cloth. Oil lamps are prepared. Children are called home. Families gather. Every unfinished task quietly assumes there will be another day to complete it. And no one has any reason to believe otherwise. As darkness slowly settles over Pompeii, countless households begin preparing the evening meal. For many families, this is the most peaceful part of the day. The work is finished. The markets have closed. The noise from the streets has softened into distant footsteps, quiet conversations, and the occasional sound of a cart making its way home before night fully arrives. Warm light from small oil lamps begins to spill through open doorways and into interior courtyards. The smell of food drifts from one house to the next. Every family eats a little differently. A wealthy household may enjoy several courses served by enslaved attendants, while a craftsman's family gathers around a much simpler table. Yet, despite the differences in wealth, the evening meal is something almost everyone looks forward to. Bread is placed at the center of many tables. Some loaves are still slightly warm from the bakery. Others were baked at home earlier in the day. Olive oil is poured into small bowls for dipping. Fresh herbs add flavor. Olives, cheese beans, onions, lentils, eggs, and seasonal vegetables appear in simple wooden or ceramic dishes. Depending on the household, there may also be fish, poultry, pork, or preserved meats. Fruit is common when it is in season: figs, grapes, apples, peaches. Sometimes a handful of nuts finishes the meal. Wine is almost always present, although it is usually mixed with water rather than consumed at full strength. Clean drinking water is valuable, and diluted wine is considered both practical and civilized. The meal itself is rarely rushed. People talk while they eat. Parents ask children about their day. Neighbors occasionally stop by to exchange news. Friends discuss business, local politics, repairs around the city, or plans for upcoming religious festivals. The subjects are ordinary. Who needs help harvesting grapes? Which merchant offers the best olive oil? Whether the coming harvest will be generous? Whose son has started an apprenticeship? Who recently purchased a new mule? These are the conversations that fill most evenings. History often remembers emperors and generals, but ordinary people spend far more time discussing ordinary things. In wealthier homes, dinner unfolds very differently. Guests recline on cushioned dining couches arranged around a low table. Servants quietly bring each course in carefully prepared order. There may be roasted meat seasoned with herbs, seafood from the nearby bay, vegetables dressed with olive oil, fresh bread, fruit, sweet pastries flavored with honey, and imported spices that have traveled astonishing distances across the Roman world. Conversation flows easily. Someone recites a poem from memory. Another guest tells a humorous story from a recent journey. Laughter echoes beneath painted ceilings. Musicians occasionally perform while guests continue eating. The atmosphere is elegant without feeling hurried. Yet even here, despite the comfort and wealth, no one imagines that this familiar routine will soon become part of history. Across the city, most families live much more simply. A pot of vegetable stew simmers over a charcoal fire. Bread is broken by hand and shared equally. A child reaches for another olive before being gently reminded to leave some for everyone else. An elderly grandfather slowly tells the same story he has told many times before. No one interrupts him. Perhaps they have heard it 100 times. Perhaps they secretly enjoy hearing it once again. Outside, the sky continues to darken. The first stars appear above the rooftops. Their reflections shimmer faintly in small pools of water gathered beside the stone streets. Some people finish eating quickly because tomorrow's work begins before sunrise. Others linger over conversation, reluctant to let the pleasant evening end. Not everyone prepares food at home. Pompeii is filled with small food shops known today as thermopolia. Their large clay jars are built directly into stone counters and hold hot meals ready to be served. Travelers, laborers, and people without kitchens often stop here for supper before returning home. Steam rises gently from freshly prepared dishes. Customers exchange a few final words with the owner before disappearing into the quiet streets. The lamps burning inside these small shops create warm islands of light against the growing darkness. As the meal comes to an end, tables are slowly cleared. Leftover bread is carefully wrapped. Oil lamps are trimmed. Clay cups are rinsed. Ashes are arranged so the morning fire can be started more easily. Nothing useful is wasted. Many Roman households are remarkably practical. Every object has value. Every resource is expected to last. In open courtyards, small fountains continue their quiet rhythm. Water falls into shallow stone basins exactly as it did during the afternoon. The sound is gentle enough to become almost invisible. Some families pause for a brief prayer at a small household shrine, a tiny offering, a whispered word of thanks, a request for health, good fortune, or protection. The gesture lasts only a moment before life quietly continues. Elsewhere, someone finishes mending a tunic by lamplight. Another sharpens a kitchen knife for tomorrow. A young woman braids her daughter's hair before bed. An old man carefully oils the leather straps of his sandals. Simple tasks, small routines, tiny moments that rarely appear in history books, yet together they reveal how people truly lived. From outside, Pompeii now looks increasingly peaceful. Golden points of lamplight appear behind windows, beneath covered walkways, and around open courtyards. The voices drifting through the streets grow fewer with each passing minute. Even the dogs bark less often. The city is preparing for sleep. No celebrations fill the night. No warning echoes through the streets. No one rushes through the darkness in fear. It is simply another quiet Roman evening beneath the familiar silhouette of Mount Vesuvius. Tomorrow already feels certain. Everyone believes they will wake to another ordinary day. As the evening meal comes to an end, many people in Pompeii are not yet ready to return home. For Romans, one of the most familiar places to spend the final hours of the day is the public bathhouse. It is much more than a place to wash. It is where neighbors meet. Friends continue conversations that began in the marketplace. Business partners discuss tomorrow's work. Travelers exchange stories, and families relax after a long day. Nearly every Roman city has public baths, and Pompeii is no exception. Several bath complexes serve different neighborhoods, welcoming people from many walks of life. Some are grand and richly decorated. Others are modest and practical. But all are designed around the same simple idea: to leave the dust of the day behind before returning home. As twilight deepens, people continue arriving through the heavy entrance doors. A merchant who spent the entire afternoon standing behind his counter. A mason with white dust still clinging to his tunic. A farmer who has traveled in from the countryside. A young apprentice eager to meet friends. An older man who has followed the same evening routine for decades. They greet familiar faces with relaxed smiles. There is no urgency here. The pace is slow, comfortable, predictable inside the entrance. Visitors leave their clothing in changing rooms where attendants watch over personal belongings. Sandals are neatly placed beneath wooden benches. Tunics are folded with practiced hands. The stone floors are pleasantly cool beneath bare feet. Voices echo softly through the vaulted rooms. The sound of water is everywhere. The Romans are remarkable engineers, and their bathhouses are among the greatest achievements of everyday Roman life. Fresh water flows continuously through pools and fountains. Hidden beneath the floors, an ingenious heating system known today as the hypocaust carries hot air produced by large furnaces. Workers feed these fires throughout the day, allowing warm air to circulate beneath stone floors and inside hollow walls. Without ever seeing the machinery itself, visitors simply experience gentle warmth spreading through the rooms. Many begin in a warm chamber where the body slowly adjusts to the changing temperature. The air is pleasant, neither too hot nor too cool. Conversations continue without interruption. Friends discuss local news. Someone laughs about an unusually demanding customer. Another complains that repairs from the old earthquake seem to take forever. A traveler shares stories from another Roman city far across the empire. The topics are ordinary. No one speaks as though history is about to change. From there, many move into the hotter rooms. Steam hangs softly beneath the ceiling. Moisture gathers on polished stone walls. Bronze lamps cast warm reflections across the water. Some visitors sit quietly, enjoying the heat after a day of physical work. Others continue talking while attendants scrape oil and dust from their skin using curved bronze tools called strigils. Soap, as we know it today, is not commonly used. Instead, olive oil is spread across the body before being gently scraped away, carrying dirt with it. The process is surprisingly effective. Nearby, a father patiently explains the routine to his young son. The boy tries to imitate the adults, though he is far more interested in watching the ripples spread across the pool than in washing himself. His curiosity draws a smile from the older bathers. Across the room, several elderly friends occupy the same corner they seem to have chosen for years. Their conversation moves easily from memories of childhood to tomorrow's weather, the grape harvest, rising prices, and whose grandchildren are growing the fastest. They have repeated these conversations hundreds of times. That is part of their comfort. Routine gives shape to ordinary life. Eventually, visitors enter the cool bathing room. The fresh water is a welcome surprise after the warmth of the heated chambers. Some step in slowly, others plunge beneath the surface without hesitation. The brief shock leaves them feeling refreshed. Water reflects the flickering light of nearby oil lamps. Tiny ripples dance across painted walls. The entire building seems to breathe with quiet movement. Bathhouses are not silent places, but neither are they noisy. Conversations remain gentle. Footsteps echo across stone. Water splashes softly. A wooden door opens. Another closes. Some visitors receive a simple massage after bathing. Others sit for a while longer before dressing. No one appears rushed. Outside, the streets continue growing darker. The last traces of sunset have faded from the western sky. Only the highest slopes of Mount Vesuvius still hold a faint outline against the deepening blue of evening. The mountain gives no warning. No glow rises from its summit. No smoke drifts into the sky. It appears exactly as it did yesterday, exactly as it has for years. When visitors finally leave the baths, they step into cooler night air. Oil lamps now illuminate street corners. Their soft golden circles barely reach across the stone roads. Neighbors wish one another a peaceful evening. A merchant promises to arrive early tomorrow. A craftsman reminds his apprentice not to be late. Someone laughs. Someone yawns. Someone pulls a cloak a little tighter around their shoulders as the warmth of the baths fades behind them. Then they begin walking home through streets they know so well that they hardly need to think about where they are going. It feels like the end of another ordinary Roman day. And to every person beneath the quiet shadow of Vesuvius, tomorrow still seems completely certain. Night has now settled fully over Pompeii. The bright colors of the afternoon have faded into gentle shades of gold and shadow, illuminated only by the soft glow of hundreds of small oil lamps scattered throughout the city. From above, Pompeii would look almost peaceful enough to mistake for a constellation. Tiny points of light shine from open courtyards, behind wooden shutters, inside workshops, and along quiet streets where the final travelers make their way home. Without electric light, darkness is something people know well. The Romans shape their evenings around it. Once the sun disappears, most work naturally comes to an end. Only a few businesses remain open, serving travelers arriving late or neighbors who have forgotten one last purchase. The streets themselves are quieter now. During the day, they echo with merchants calling to customers, craftsmen striking metal, carts rumbling over stone, animals moving through the narrow roads, and hundreds of overlapping conversations. Now those sounds have become scattered and gentle. A pair of sandals taps against the paving stones. A wooden door closes. Somewhere nearby, laughter drifts from a family courtyard before slowly fading into silence. A dog barks once, then curls into sleep beneath the shelter of a doorway. The city is not asleep yet, but it is preparing to be. In many homes, servants clear the remains of supper. Ceramic bowls are washed. Wooden tables are wiped clean. The final pieces of bread are wrapped in cloth. Wine jars are sealed for another day. Ashes are carefully arranged inside cooking hearths, so tomorrow's fire will be easier to start. These are ordinary tasks performed almost without thought. Hands know exactly what to do after repeating the same movements thousands of times. Children are becoming sleepy. One little girl struggles to keep her eyes open while listening to her grandmother finish an old family story. A boy quietly places his favorite carved wooden toy beside his sleeping mat before climbing under a wool blanket. Parents speak more softly now. The excitement of the day has given way to calm voices and tired smiles. Many homes are built around open central courtyards, Even at night, these spaces remain alive. Moonlight falls through the open roof onto small gardens where herbs, flowers, and fruit trees grow beside shallow pools, collecting rainwater. The quiet splash of a fountain continues without interruption. Its gentle rhythm has become part of the household's life. People hardly notice it anymore. Yet if it suddenly stopped, everyone would. Some families spend a little longer outdoors before sleeping. The summer air is pleasant now that the heat of the afternoon has faded. They sit together beneath the open sky. Someone points toward a familiar constellation. Another remarks that tomorrow should be another warm day. No one expects anything different. Elsewhere, a wealthy household has finally dismissed its dinner guests. Servants quietly extinguish extra lamps one by one. Silver cups are gathered. Fine tableware is carried carefully back into storage. The large dining room, filled with conversation only an hour earlier, gradually falls silent. In more modest homes, there is very little to put away. A few bowls, a cooking pot, a loaf of bread reserved for breakfast. Life is simpler, but the feeling of home is no less real. Outside, the streets belong to a different group of people now. A few travelers continue walking beneath the lamplight. Night watchmen move through the neighborhoods, keeping an eye on doors, workshops, and public spaces. Their presence offers quiet reassurance rather than alarm. Most nights pass without incident. A physician returns home after visiting a patient. A sailor arriving late from the bay carries a small lantern to guide his way through the uneven streets. An elderly woman walks slowly with the support of a wooden staff, accompanied by a younger relative. The city never becomes completely still. It simply breathes more slowly. From somewhere in the distance comes the steady sound of water flowing through the aqueduct-fed fountains. The Romans have built an extraordinary system that brings fresh water into the city from the surrounding hills. Even while most people sleep, that water continues its endless journey through pipes, fountains, baths, and gardens. Life quietly continues even when no one is watching. The moon climbs higher above the rooftops. Its pale light outlines the temples, columns, tiled roofs, and the silent shape of Mount Vesuvius beyond the city walls. The mountain appears almost protective in the darkness, a familiar companion watching over generations who have lived in its shadow. No one looking toward it tonight sees a threat, only a landmark, only home. A faint breeze carries the scent of vineyards from the surrounding countryside. Somewhere nearby, jasmine flowers release their fragrance into the cool night air. The smell mingles with warm stone, olive wood smoke lingering from evening fires, and the distant salt of the Bay of Naples. It is a scent unique to this place, a scent that thousands of people know so well they no longer think about it. One by one, lamps begin to disappear. A flame is gently covered, another is pinched out, another burns just a little longer while someone finishes sewing, writing, or reading a scroll. Eventually, even those lights fade. Darkness spreads quietly across the city. Only a handful of lamps remain visible. Pompeii has almost gone to sleep. Its streets rest peacefully beneath the stars. Its people dream of tomorrow's work, tomorrow's meals, tomorrow's conversations, tomorrow's ordinary routines. None of them realize that, before another night arrives, their city will become one of the most remembered places in human history. For most of Pompeii, the day has finally come to an end. Doors are closed. Oil lamps burn low. The voices that filled the streets only a few hours ago have faded into the occasional murmur carried through an open courtyard, or the soft creak of a wooden shutter moving gently in the night breeze. Across the city, families begin preparing for sleep. Bedrooms in the Roman world are often much smaller than modern ones. They are not designed for spending long hours awake. They are places of rest, simple, practical, and comfortable enough for the people who use them every night. In a modest home, a mother shakes out a wool blanket before laying it across a wooden bed frame. Nearby, her husband folds the tunic he wore throughout the day and places his sandals neatly beside the bed. Their children are already half asleep, wrapped beneath light blankets, after a long afternoon of running through the streets. The smallest child clutches a handmade cloth doll stitched together from scraps of worn fabric. It is far from perfect. One arm is slightly longer than the other, but it has clearly been loved for many years. In another house, an elderly couple prepares for bed with the quiet rhythm that comes from decades of shared routine. Without speaking very much, they know exactly what the other is about to do. One trims the wick of an oil lamp. The other closes the wooden shutters overlooking the street. They have performed these same small tasks thousands of times. Routine has become a language of its own. Across Pompeii, wealth creates different surroundings, but remarkably similar endings to the day. Inside a large villa, servants move quietly through beautifully painted rooms. They extinguish unnecessary lamps, straighten cushions, close interior doors, and prepare the sleeping chambers for the family. The walls glow with colorful frescoes depicting gardens, birds' temples, and scenes from mythology. Marble columns surround an open courtyard where moonlight reflects softly across the surface of a small fountain. The owners retire only after everything has been carefully arranged. Yet even in the grandest homes, sleep remains wonderfully ordinary. Jewelry is removed. Hair is loosened. Simple night garments replace formal clothing. Tomorrow's responsibilities can wait until morning. In smaller houses, there are no servants to help. Everything is done by the family itself. A father checks that the hearth is safe before lying down. His wife places tomorrow's bread beneath a cloth. An older daughter quietly finishes repairing a torn sleeve by the last light of an oil lamp before finally setting her needle aside. These moments are humble. They are almost invisible to history, yet they are the moments that truly filled most human lives. Outside, the city grows steadily quieter. The occasional footsteps that still echo through the streets belong mostly to late travelers, night watchmen, or someone returning home after visiting relatives. A cat slips silently along the top of a stone wall. Somewhere beyond the rooftops, An owl calls into the darkness. The sound lingers only for a moment before disappearing again. The fountains continue their endless song. Fresh water pours into carved stone basins exactly as it did during daylight. The city never becomes completely silent. There is always moving water, always a distant breeze, always the quiet sounds of thousands of sleeping people sharing the same night. Many Roman bedrooms have little furniture beyond what is necessary: a wooden bed, a small chest for clothing, perhaps a stool, a shelf holding a clay lamp, or a few personal belongings. Comfort comes not from luxury, but from familiarity. Everything has its place. Everything serves a purpose. The warm air stored in the stone walls during the afternoon slowly escapes into the cool night. Rooms become more comfortable. Blankets are pulled higher over sleeping children. A husband quietly checks that the front door has been secured. His wife whispers a final goodnight before blowing out the lamp. Darkness fills the room almost instantly. Unlike the modern world, there are no distant streetlights, glowing windows, or electric signs beyond the walls. Night is truly dark. Only moonlight filters through open courtyards and small windows. Above the city stretches an extraordinary sky. Without artificial light, countless stars shine across the heavens. The Milky Way arches overhead with remarkable clarity. Many people have looked upon this same sky since childhood. It is as familiar to them as the streets beneath their feet. Some glance upward one final time before stepping indoors. Others never look at all. For them, tomorrow will arrive exactly as it always has. Inside one house, a grandfather quietly tells his grandson that the stars have guided sailors across the sea for generations. In another, a young couple whispers about the child they hope to have one day. Elsewhere, someone lies awake for a little longer, thinking about unpaid debts, the coming grape harvest, or repairs that still need to be finished before autumn. These private thoughts will never appear in any historical record. No archaeologist can uncover them, yet they were just as real as the walls, the streets, and the temples that still survive today. Beyond the rooftops, Mount Vesuvius stands beneath the same sky, silent, still. Its familiar outline blends gently into the darkness. No fire crowns its summit. No towering cloud rises into the stars. Nothing about the mountain seems unusual. It has watched over Pompeii for generations. Tonight appears no different. Across the city, one final lamp after another quietly disappears. Families drift into sleep. Children dream. The fountains continue flowing. The breeze moves softly through gardens and courtyards. And beneath the peaceful night sky, an entire city falls asleep believing that morning will be just another ordinary beginning. Deep into the night, Pompeii lies almost completely still. The lively streets that only a few hours ago echoed with conversation and laughter are now nearly empty. Most doors remain closed. Most lamps have burned out. Only an occasional flicker of light escapes through a narrow window where someone has not yet fallen asleep. The city rests. Yet even in the quietest hours, Pompeii is never entirely motionless. Night belongs to a different rhythm, a slower one, a quieter one. The public fountains continue to flow without pause. Fresh water pours steadily into worn stone basins, the sound echoing gently through deserted streets. The aqueduct that supplies the city never sleeps. Long after the markets have closed and families have gone to bed, the water continues its endless journey from distant springs into the heart of the city. Somewhere along a narrow street, a pair of night watchmen walk slowly beneath the light of a small oil lantern. Their sandals scrape softly across the volcanic paving stones. Every few moments they pause, listening, not because they expect danger, but because this is their duty. They check doors. They watch for fire. They make certain the streets remain peaceful until sunrise. For them, the silence is familiar. It has become part of every working night. Far above them, the stars shine with extraordinary brightness. Without the glow of modern cities, the heavens seem almost impossibly clear. Thousands of stars stretch from one horizon to the other. The Milky Way forms a pale river of light overhead. For generations, Roman sailors have navigated by these stars. Farmers have watched them mark the passing seasons. Children have grown up hearing stories about the constellations from parents and grandparents. Tonight, they shine exactly as they always have. A soft breeze drifts inland from the Bay of Naples. It carries the scent of salt water, damp earth, and vineyards resting beneath the darkness. The warmth stored in the stone buildings throughout the day slowly escapes into the cool night air. The temperature is comfortable, perfect for sleeping. Inside countless homes, peaceful dreams have replaced the concerns of the day. A craftsman dreams of completing a difficult commission. A merchant imagines profitable trade with customers arriving tomorrow morning. A young apprentice dreams of one day owning his own workshop. A farmer pictures healthy vines heavy with ripe grapes. Children dream of games they will play when morning comes. No dream carries even the smallest hint of what tomorrow will bring. In one modest house, a baby stirs quietly before settling back into sleep as a mother gently places a reassuring hand upon the blanket. Across the city, an elderly man wakes briefly, listens to the familiar sound of flowing water outside his window, and smiles before drifting back to sleep. Routine is comforting. The sounds of home become part of the rhythm of life. Even silence has familiar voices. Occasionally, an animal breaks the stillness. A donkey shifts inside its stable. A horse stamps one hoof against the ground. A dog lifts its head for a moment before curling back into sleep. An owl glides silently above the rooftops, disappearing into the darkness beyond the city walls. Nothing feels unusual. Nothing feels urgent. The great villas now stand in complete darkness. Painted walls, elegant statues, polished mosaics, and carefully tended gardens are hidden beneath the night. The modest homes nearby are equally quiet. Within them sleep wealthy citizens, merchants, laborers, artisans, freedmen, enslaved workers, travelers, and children. The differences that shape daytime life seem less important now. Night offers the same darkness to everyone. Outside the city, vineyards spread across the countryside, beneath a blanket of moonlight. Rows of grapevines cast long silver shadows across the rich volcanic soil. Olive trees stand almost perfectly still. The fields rest after another day of labor. Farm animals sleep peacefully inside their shelters. The countryside is as calm as the city itself, and above it all rises Mount Vesuvius. Its broad silhouette dominates the landscape, even in darkness. To the people of Pompeii, it is simply part of home, a landmark seen every day since childhood, a mountain that shelters fertile fields and prosperous vineyards. Few give it a second thought. For centuries it has remained quiet enough to earn their trust. The earth itself seems completely at peace. Yet deep beneath the mountain, far below the sleeping city, immense forces continue their slow and invisible work. No one hears them. No one feels them. The pressure building within the earth is hidden beneath layers of solid rock, beyond the reach of human sight or imagination. The people sleeping above have no reason to fear what they cannot possibly know. History often makes the past feel inevitable. Looking backward, we know exactly what is coming. But the people living through this night possess none of that knowledge. To them, this is simply another peaceful evening in late summer. Tomorrow already exists in their minds. There will be bread to bake, markets to open, repairs to finish, friends to greet, children to wake, fields to tend, baths to visit, meals to prepare. Life will continue exactly as it always has, or so everyone believes. For now, the city remains wrapped in perfect stillness. The fountains continue their quiet song. The stars slowly cross the sky. The breeze moves gently through gardens and narrow streets. And beneath the silent shadow of Vesuvius, Pompeii sleeps peacefully, unaware that history is only a few hours away. Long before the first hint of sunrise appears, Pompeii begins to stir almost imperceptibly. The city is still wrapped in darkness, yet for a few people, the new day has already begun. A baker rises from his bed while most of his neighbors are still asleep. He dresses quietly so as not to wake his family, slips into his sandals, and steps into the cool pre-dawn air. The streets feel completely different at this hour. The heat of yesterday has disappeared. The paving stones are cool beneath his feet. His footsteps echo gently between the silent buildings as he walks toward the bakery, carrying a small oil lamp that casts a warm circle of light around him. When he reaches the workshop, the familiar routine begins almost automatically. Ashes are cleared from the previous day's fire. Fresh wood is stacked inside the oven. Flint strikes steel. A tiny spark catches. Soon the first flames begin to dance across the dry wood, and before long the great oven slowly comes back to life. The smell of smoke drifts into the quiet street. Nearby, another baker is already kneading dough prepared the evening before. Strong hands press and fold the soft mixture with practiced confidence. There is no need to think about each movement. Years of repetition have transformed work into instinct. Before the sun has even risen, hundreds of loaves will already be baking for the city's households. Elsewhere, fishermen returning from the Bay of Naples guide their small boats toward the shore. The sea is calm. The sky above the water is still deep blue, though the eastern horizon has begun to grow just a little lighter. They sort their catch beneath the glow of small lanterns, preparing baskets that will soon make their way to the morning market. The smell of salt water mixes with fresh fish and damp rope. It is the scent of another ordinary morning. Along one of the city gates, a watchman pauses for a moment. His long night is almost over. Soon another guard will replace him, and life inside Pompeii will once again fill the streets. He stretches tired shoulders and looks toward Mount Vesuvius. The mountain is little more than a dark outline against the fading stars. Nothing about it appears unusual. Nothing draws his attention. He turns away and continues his rounds. In the countryside surrounding the city, farmers are beginning to wake. A rooster announces the coming dawn from somewhere beyond the vineyards. Donkeys shift inside their shelters. Goats stir. A shepherd prepares to lead his animals toward fresh grazing land once daylight arrives. Morning always comes early for those who work the land. Inside countless homes, oil lamps burn lower as the night comes to an end. One mother quietly prepares grain for breakfast before the children awaken. A young servant carries fresh water from a nearby fountain. An elderly man opens his shutters and breathes deeply, welcoming the cool morning air before the heat of the day returns. The city has not yet become busy, but its heartbeat is slowly returning. Somewhere, a pot is placed over the fire. Somewhere else, a broom brushes yesterday's dust from a doorway. A stable door creaks open. A mule shakes its harness. The first cartwheels begin rolling across the stone streets, their familiar sound carrying through the peaceful silence. The rhythm of daily life is beginning once again. Above the rooftops, the eastern sky gradually changes. Deep blue becomes violet. Violet becomes pale gold. The stars begin disappearing one by one. The first birds awaken. Their songs spread across gardens, courtyards, and rooftops. A light breeze moves through the vines beyond the city walls. Everything feels fresh. Everything feels new. No one looking around this morning would suspect that this day will be remembered for thousands of years. It begins like every other day. Children still asleep beneath wool blankets. Merchants thinking about opening their shops. Craftsmen preparing their tools. Servants sweeping courtyards. Farmers checking the weather. Neighbors greeting one another with familiar smiles. The ordinary beauty of everyday life is everywhere. This is precisely why the story of Pompeii continues to move people today. It reminds us that history is rarely made during extraordinary moments alone. It is built upon millions of quiet mornings that begin with simple routines, familiar faces, and the comfortable certainty that tomorrow will arrive just as yesterday did. As the first rays of sunlight finally reach the highest rooftops, golden light slowly spreads across temples, gardens, workshops, and narrow stone streets. The city awakens. Another ordinary Roman day has begun, or at least, that is what every person in Pompeii believes as they step into the morning beneath the peaceful shadow of Mount Vesuvius. With the sunrise now fully illuminating the city, Pompeii comes alive once again. The quiet streets of dawn are quickly transformed into busy pathways filled with familiar faces, familiar voices, and familiar routines. Wooden shutters swing open one after another. The scent of freshly baked bread spreads through the neighborhoods. Shopkeepers lift heavy doors, sweep the dust from their entrances, and arrange their goods where passing customers can see them. Another ordinary morning has begun. The forum gradually fills with people arriving from every direction. Merchants greet one another as they have done countless times before. Farmers carry baskets overflowing with vegetables, grapes, herbs, and olives gathered only hours earlier. Potters display neatly stacked bowls and jars. Metalworkers arrange knives, lamps, and household tools across wooden tables. The sounds of trade return to the city. Coins clink against one another. Voices overlap in friendly conversation. Someone bargains over the price of a basket. Another asks about a shipment expected from Naples. Nearby, a pair of children race through the edge of the marketplace before disappearing between the legs of laughing adults. No one is in a hurry. Life follows its familiar rhythm. Inside the bakeries, fresh loaves emerge from the ovens. Warm bread is placed into woven baskets, while customers begin forming small lines outside the doors. Some families buy only enough for the day. Others purchase several loaves to feed large households. The baker recognizes many of the faces. There is comfort in seeing the same neighbors every morning. Across the street, a wine merchant carefully uncovers rows of clay amphorae. He checks each seal before inviting his first customers inside. Olive oil merchants do the same. So do sellers of cloth pottery, spices, jewelry, sandals, and tools. The city has awakened completely. From nearby workshops comes the familiar sound of craftsmen beginning another day's work. A carpenter measures a wooden beam. A blacksmith feeds fresh charcoal into the forge. A stone mason carefully smooths the edge of a newly carved block that will soon become part of another repaired building. Even now, nearly 17 years after the great earthquake, parts of Pompeii are still being restored. Scaffolding stands beside several structures. Fresh plaster dries upon repaired walls. Life has moved forward. The city has healed. People believe the worst is long behind them. In one neighborhood, a teacher welcomes several children into a small classroom. Wax tablets are placed upon their laps. Letters are copied carefully. Some students concentrate with impressive determination. Others find it much harder to resist watching birds outside the doorway or whispering quietly to their friends. Across the city, physicians prepare simple medicines from herbs, oils, and minerals. Barbers sharpen their razors. Laundry workers begin another long day, washing and pressing clothing. Every occupation has its own rhythm. Every citizen contributes in some small way to the life of the city. Visitors arrive through the city gates, carrying news from neighboring towns. A traveler asks for directions to the forum. Another looks for a place to purchase fresh food before continuing his journey. Pompeii is not isolated. Roads and sea routes connected to the wider Roman world, bringing goods, ideas, languages, and people from across the empire. The harbor near the Bay of Naples remains active as fishing boats unload their morning catch. Larger merchant vessels wait farther offshore, carrying cargo that has traveled hundreds or even thousands of miles. Some goods have crossed the Mediterranean, others have journeyed from Egypt, North Africa, Greece, Hispania, or distant provinces far beyond Italy. Pompeii may seem like a small city, yet it is connected to a remarkably vast world. As the morning grows warmer, fountains once again become gathering places. People arrive carrying clay jars. While waiting their turn, they exchange neighborhood news. Someone announces the birth of a child. Another mentions an upcoming religious festival. A third complains good-naturedly about a stubborn donkey that refused to move all morning. The conversations are light, comfortably ordinary. Nothing suggests that history is quietly approaching. Above the rooftops, Mount Vesuvius remains unchanged. Its familiar green slopes overlook vineyards stretching toward the city. Farmers working nearby occasionally glance toward the mountain without giving it much thought. Why would they? It has stood there throughout their entire lives. The fertile soil beneath their feet seems like a blessing rather than a warning. By now, sunlight reflects brightly from painted walls and polished stone streets. Children laugh as they carry small errands for their parents. Servants hurry between households. Officials begin another day's work. Dogs sleep beneath shaded porticos, while cats wander confidently through quiet courtyards. Everywhere there is movement. Everywhere there is purpose. And everywhere there is the quiet confidence that this day will unfold just like every day before it. No one imagines that they are living through the final ordinary morning Pompeii will ever know. That knowledge belongs only to us. The people themselves continue smiling, working, buying, selling, teaching, repairing, cooking, building, and planning for a future they fully expect to see. History has not yet interrupted their lives. For them, this is simply another beautiful summer morning in one of the most prosperous cities along the Bay of Naples. As the morning continues, the streets of Pompeii grow steadily busier. The cool freshness of dawn has given way to the pleasant warmth of the Mediterranean sun, and the city settles comfortably into the rhythm that has shaped everyday life for generations. From almost every direction comes the sound of work. A hammer strikes metal inside a blacksmith's workshop. The steady scrape of a carpenter's plane smooths a wooden board. Potters turn their wheels with practiced hands, shaping fresh clay into bowls, jars, and lamps that will soon find their way into homes throughout the city. In another neighborhood, the scent of wet plaster hangs in the air. Builders continue repairing walls damaged years earlier by the great earthquake. Some houses are finished, their painted facades looking almost new. Others still stand behind wooden scaffolding. Stone blocks wait to be lifted into place. Buckets of mortar sit ready beside the workmen. The earthquake has become part of the city's past. People rarely speak about it with fear anymore. Instead, It is simply another task to be completed, another building to restore, another wall to strengthen. Life has moved forward. Near the forum, officials begin their daily responsibilities. Documents are unrolled. Wax tablets are filled with careful handwriting. Messengers arrive, carrying information from neighboring towns. Disagreements are settled. Taxes are recorded. Contracts are discussed. Most of the work is ordinary administration, the kind that keeps any thriving city functioning day after day. Across the marketplace, bargaining grows more animated as additional customers arrive. A woman carefully compares two baskets before choosing the sturdier one. A farmer proudly displays bunches of ripe grapes still cool from the morning air. A spice merchant opens a small container, allowing a curious customer to smell fragrant herbs imported from distant provinces. Nearby, children watch a street performer who has gathered a small crowd with clever tricks and humorous stories. For a few moments, laughter replaces the sounds of business. The performer bows dramatically. Several amused spectators toss him a few small coins before continuing on their way. Not far away, a physician visits the home of an elderly patient. His leather bag contains simple instruments, herbs, oils, and carefully prepared remedies. Roman medicine cannot cure every illness, but experience has taught physicians much about wounds, broken bones, fevers, and the value of cleanliness. After offering advice to the family, he steps back into the street and continues toward his next patient. At one of the public fountains, women and servants patiently wait, with clay jars balanced beside their feet. Fresh water pours continuously into the stone basin. While they wait, conversation flows just as steadily. News travels quickly in places like these. Someone has become engaged. Someone else has purchased a neighboring property. A shipment of fine olive oil has finally arrived. There is even laughter over a neighbor whose stubborn donkey wandered into a vegetable garden the previous afternoon. These small stories will never be written into history books. Yet they are the stories that fill ordinary lives. In shaded courtyards throughout the city, household work continues. Fresh laundry hangs from ropes stretched between columns. Bread dough rises beneath linen cloths. Herbs dry in the warm air. Children help where they can. Although many become distracted after only a few minutes, inventing games with sticks, stones, or simple carved toys. Parents pretend to scold them before smiling to themselves. Some things never change. Beyond the city walls, farmers continue working beneath the rich volcanic slopes. They inspect vines heavy with growing grapes. Olive trees shimmer gently in the light breeze. Fields promise another productive season. The soil is remarkably fertile. Generations have thanked the land for its abundance, never imagining that the same mountain helping nourish their crops also hides immense power beneath its surface. To the people working these fields, Vesuvius is a generous neighbor, not a threat, not a warning, simply part of the landscape they have always known. As the sun climbs higher, shadows beneath the porticos become welcome places to rest. Travelers pause to drink water. Merchants wipe the warmth from their brows. Dogs stretch lazily beneath wooden carts. Even the pigeons seem content as they wander across the paving stones in search of scattered grain. The city feels prosperous, orderly, alive. Everything appears exactly as it should. If a visitor had arrived in Pompeii on this very morning, nothing would have seemed unusual. The streets were busy. The markets were full. The workshops echoed with honest work. Children laughed. Families planned for the coming days. Builders expected to finish their repairs. Merchants expected more customers before midday. No one hurried. No one fled. No one looked toward Mount Vesuvius with fear. Life was unfolding exactly as it had yesterday, and exactly as everyone believed it would tomorrow. That quiet confidence is perhaps the most moving part of Pompeii's story. The people who walked these streets were not living through what they thought would become history. They were simply living another ordinary day, a day filled with work, conversation, hope, routine, and countless small moments that seemed too ordinary to ever be remembered. And yet, nearly 2,000 years later, it is precisely those ordinary moments that allow us to see Pompeii not as a legend, but as a living city, still quietly waiting beneath the ash.